bullpen standpoint, we feel like we've done that. Now, we've got to play 162 games, so there's still a lot of time. But overall, I think our pitching's given us a chance to win almost every game.
That was John Mozeliak in like mid-July, Alex, talking about the offensive inconsistency of the Cardinals that we have seen in 2024. With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Alex, that's been the case all season long. It never really changed. When we look back at the 2024 season, whenever this thing comes to an end in October, the way that you're going to write about, okay, what went wrong for this team? The pitching obviously wasn't great, but we all knew that to be the case going into the season. You can look at the roster, and it was unreasonable to expect them to be a top 10 rotation in ERA at the end of the season. That was never in their range of outcomes. What was in their range of outcomes was the top 10 offense, and that has obviously not been the case. They've been a bottom 10 offense for the entirety of the season. And the reason I'm bringing this up today is because Robert Murray tweeted out earlier this morning that the Cardinals are calling up Thomas Saggese, an infielder that the Cardinals acquired last year at the trade deadline. He was acquired by them in the Jordan Montgomery deal with the Texas Rangers. He was considered to be, at the time, the prize of their deadline haul, right? And the reason why I have been arguing that they should have called him up for like 5 weeks now is because he's eligible for the Rule 5 draft this offseason. And what that means is that the Cardinals were required this offseason to place him on their 40-man roster, Alex. That means that at some point between today and like mid-November or something like that, they had to have him on the 40-man. So there's no real reason why you would wait to make such a decision necessarily, other than just you don't want to do it for whatever reason. So finally they have made this move. Alex, it feels like all season long they have been weeks behind when it comes to like the transaction that we were all expecting or hoping and believing that they should make. And then when you see it made, you see Luken Baker come up here and make a real tangible difference with what he's able to produce with the lineup. Hey, you know who's been pretty good at the plate? Who could have seen this one coming, honestly? Ivan Herrera. Since his return to the lineup has been a real tangible upgrade for them as a right-handed bat. You know what's nice to see? Jordan Walker playing every day. Had the 5-hit game in New York, had the home run, double over the weekend. Hasn't been perfect by any stretch, but it's nice to see him back up in the big leagues for sure, playing every day and not just against lefties, who he's worse against. I'm glad the Cardinals today decided to call up Thomas Saggese. It is well overdue, in my opinion. I told this to the manager when I was in his office. He asked me, what would you guys have done? Instead of bringing up Jordan Walker, who would you have gone with? And at the time, I said, I would have gone with Thomas Saggese. He said, well, yeah, that's a 40-man move, though, and that's above my head. And I was like, well, I don't know what to do with that. Like, this is a conversation that I need to have with Mo then. But they decided to finally make this move, and so they deserve, I suppose, credit for it. But, Alex, this team at every point, it feels like this season, has been 1, 2, 3, at times 4 or 5 weeks behind on the moves that they needed to make, and it ultimately cost them an opportunity at the postseason.
And it's hard to give them credit for it because it creates the frustration of, could we have been talking about a more realistic picture of a playoffs if you would have made these moves a little bit more proactively? If you would have brought up a Luken Baker in the middle of July when things seemed to be dipping post-All-Star break? Could it have changed when you brought up Thomas Saggese maybe a bit earlier when Nolan Gorman was striking out every single time he took the plate? Or you go to the pitching side of things. Could you have gotten a little bit more of a spark? That's the part that post-All-Star break, it felt like the Cardinals were still on a run. And then when things fell off after the Cubs and Reds series, you're thinking, uh-oh, this team is going to hit a wall at some point.
You can follow him on Twitter at Marty Smith ESPN. We sincerely appreciate his time today. Alex, I used to listen to Marty and McGee each and every weekend whenever I was working in Columbia at the time as I was a student at the University of Missouri. Been listening to this guy for a long time. He does a fantastic job, and he's here on behalf of Game Change. They're aiming to disrupt the college sports at a time where donor fatigue is there. Fundraising is becoming an arms race. Marty, tell us a little bit about what you're doing with Game Change.
Yeah, first of all, I really appreciate you letting me take a moment to share. I decided to partner with them because of the era we're in with NIL. And you noted the donor fatigue and all that. It's a transformative time in collegiate athletics. And all of these schools, I don't care if you're a school with tremendous wealth and resources, Texas A&M, Texas, Georgia, Bama, Michigan, Ohio State, et cetera, they're trying to figure out ways to continue to infuse the athletic department with money. And then there's like schools like my alma mater, Radford University, who we're not only trying to figure out how to get some semblance of NIL to pay players, we're trying to make sure we survive. And Game Change is a great way for fans of a specific university to contribute that way. All you do is go to gogamechange.com, gogamechange.com, input your credit or debit card into the website there, and choose the school you want to financially benefit. Then every single purchase you make with that credit card or debit card is automatically rounded up to the next dollar, and automatically that difference is shipped straight to the school of your choice. The athletic department can then take that money and distribute it however they so choose within the athletic department. It's an awesome initiative, really smart, and it's also a tax write-off. It's considered a charitable donation, and when you do it, you also enter yourself for the opportunity to win prizes, money, all kinds of stuff. And a lot of us are trying to figure out ways to benefit our alma maters, and this is a real easy way to do it. Go GameChange.com, input your credit or debit card, pick your school, and you're off and running.
He's Marty Smith, one of the best in the business. Hey, Marty, thanks so much for hopping on with us today, man, helping us break down this Mizzou versus Boston College game and looking a little big picture at the college football landscape this year. We wish you the best. We'll talk with you again soon, my friend.
Grateful for you guys. Thank y'all. I'm sure my phone's going to ring in 8 minutes. Drink will be asking me what the hell I'm talking about.
Good, Marty Smith, one of the best in the business. Appreciate his time, as always, joining us here on BK and Ferrario. You can check out his great work over at ESPN and on Twitter at Marty Smith ESPN. I think he's fantastic, Alex. He is a guy that I think makes college football fun, and that's what college football is supposed to be. If you think about whatever it is that's your favorite college football memory, T-Bone, maybe yours was last weekend with the Illini taking down Kansas. I am grateful that I was not here yesterday to hear you gloat about that specific win for your Illini. But like for me, it's going back to the Mizzou versus Oklahoma game. College game day was there. You have the fans storming the fields, and then afterwards you're taking the goalpost out to Harpo's. Like, that's what college football is all about. That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be fun at the end of the day, whether it's winning the national championship for your team or winning a massive game at night with college game day in town. That's what it's all about, and Marty Smith seems to get at the heart of that. This game between Mizzou and Boston College has a chance to be a really fun one, but if Mizzou loses this game, boy howdy, we're going to have a lot of questions to answer, man.
Which will also be very fun because we have those questions and it creates. So I was going to ask you before we had Marty hop on. Last year, it felt like the first big game for Mizzou was that Mizzou versus Kentucky or Mizzou versus Memphis, because Memphis was ranked at that time.
K-State, I think, was the first really big one.
Does this give off that same vibe?
No. That game for them will be Texas A&M on the road. That's the first, real big game for them. This is their first test, to me, where you look at it and you're like, all right, this is a losable game. They could not lose. There was no scenario that you could present to me within realistic bounds where they would have lost to Murray State or Buffalo. They could lose this game against Boston College. Now, it would require a few things going wrong. Like, Brady Cook throws a couple of picks. Defense allows a couple of big plays. And, stuff goes awry quickly. But this is one of those games where if you escape and you win by 10, it will be viewed as disappointing relative to expectations, but you took care of business. And ultimately, that's what the rest of the year is about, right? Like last year, Mizzou had a couple of really close calls against lesser-than opponents. That Florida game, dude, they were really lucky to be able to win that. 4th and 17, hit Burden down the field. Like, you needed that one, and they found a way to get through. Kentucky, it took them converting on a punt, a fake punt late in that, or midway through, I think, the second quarter in that one. And that was the way that they were able to get through it. Early in the season, Middle Tennessee, Memphis, both games way closer than anybody would have liked. That's kind of how I feel about this one. This is it's very much a pass-fail kind of a test. Gotcha. I don't care if you cover. I don't care about any of that. Just win the game. Win the football game. Get out of there with a W. But the game where you start getting to the point of okay, this is now your real test, the way that K-State was, to me, that's Texas A&M on this schedule. Do you agree with that, T-Bone? That's the first true Kansas State-level test from last year?
Yeah, I agree. Boston College is more of the Memphis one for me because it is a team that is in the top 25.
That's what I kind of thought.
I don't believe they're a top 25 kind of team once you get to the end of the season. And I think A&M is definitely the one that is kind of the jumping off point. It's not just it's not only a test. It's like this is a potential playoff caliber game that we're going to have to go up against. So I think that is more in line with the K-State.
It does feel like, though, that if they dominate Boston College, just make them look inept, that's where everybody's talking about Mizzou.
Yes, 100%. That's where you could get to the place where people are like, whoa, We underestimating a top 6 team in the
Where'd
country
this
right
team
now?
come
We're
from?
not only is Missouri a top 6, but maybe they're closer to that top 3 than the others in the top 10.
Everybody should look at it and go, oh, so Boston College beat Florida State and sucked.
We might go there 4 weeks from now, but after this weekend, we'll overreact.
You might go there. We won't go there.
I'll go there because I'm still shocked Boston College made the top 25 for beating Chex Notes Duquesne last week.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. That's not why they did it. They did it because of the Florida State win, which, of course,
They would have been
you
there
look back
2
on.
weeks
T-Bone's just sour because Illinois is not a top 25
Yeah, what the
team.
hell is that?
They're 26th. They're fine.
No.
Coming up next, the 49ers
Top
offseason
25.
threw us off of the scent of what was obviously one of the best teams in the NFL. What did we learn about them last night? What did we learn about the Jets last night? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Terry Hendricks here at the Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals back in action tonight as they start a 3-game set at home against the Cincinnati Reds. 6:45 will be first pitch. Andre Palante will get the start for the St. Louis Cardinals. And according to our Cardinals insider, Katie Wu, the Cardinals will be recalling Thomas Ajayci today. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Week 1 of the NFL season is officially in the books. Last night was the conclusion with the 49ers taking down the Jets in a game that wasn't even as close as the final score might indicate. 32-19. They blew them out of the water, Alex. It was a no contest basically from the end of the first half on. The 49ers were just clearly the superior team. There was one great drive by the Jets, one great drive early in the first half where they went like 7 minutes, traveled the course like 70 yards. I was like, okay, this is the Aaron Rodgers offense. Every third down, they were going no huddle, immediately getting it to Garrett Wilson. It was like, all right, I was wondering if we would see this, and here it is. And then it just basically didn't happen. They fizzled out, and the offense wasn't what you were kind of hoping for it to be. Rodgers finishes 13 for 21, $167, touchdown, and a pick. And they were just okay offensively for the most part. But to me, last night was about the 49ers. All offseason, the conversations about the 49ers were, what are they going to do with Trent Williams? What are they going to do with Brandon Ayuk? Are they going to trade Deebo Samuel? Are they going to be able to get things going again defensively with some injuries that they've dealt with, new defensive coordinator? What are the 49ers going to look like? Weird offseason, bad vibes coming off of what was a devastating, once again, loss in the Super Bowl. Alex, what I learned last night, and I'm curious your guys' thoughts on this as well. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. And the YouTube chat is officially back up and running. YouTube.com/101ESPN-STL. We did have some issues with our stream earlier. It is officially back up and running now. What I learned last night, 49ers are every bit as good as we thought they could be this season. There is no drop-off whatsoever. This is not a team that had the bad vibes of the offseason follow them along into the regular season. That is the Bengals. They absolutely have that issue. The 49ers did not. They've overcome anything that might have been there. They didn't even get a good night last night out of Brandon Ayuk. He was terrible. Dropped a couple of passes, looked off in general, but he's off. Christian McCaffrey didn't even play. Jordan Mason, meanwhile, goes for $147. They looked like the 49ers that we saw last year. And to me right now, they're still the number one team in the NFC until proven otherwise.
It goes to show you how dominant a team is that when you talk about them being probably the best or the second best team in the National Football League, however you view it, their quarterback was probably the least impressive player on that team last night. Like, Brock Purdy was fine. Didn't throw for a touchdown. He threw for 231 yards. The story of that game was a guy that most people had never heard of, Jordan Mason, just running amok on the New York Jets that didn't have Christian McCaffrey, an offensive line that just powerhoused a defense that was supposed to be the best in the NFL. And then defensively, San Francisco's exactly what they were last year. They will eat you up anytime you try and do something. I think I saw it. The Jets were 6 for 10 on third down conversions, and 3 of those 6 came on that one touchdown drive. So, like, they didn't even put themselves in a position because San Francisco just ate them up to have any success and keep plays alive. What was it? The first 4 drives, 3 of them were just punting right away. I was more impressed by the San Francisco 49ers. Like you said, BK, the Jets, I expected them to struggle in that game because you were going up against the powerhouse of the NFC. But San Francisco just proved that as fun it is to talk about Dallas and Detroit, it really doesn't matter because San Francisco is going to be there no matter what.
The Jets had 5 drives in the first half. 1 was a touchdown drive, 12 plays, 70 yards, touchdown. The other 4 drives went 10 plays and 14 yards combined. Like, they were 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, turnover, 3 and out. It was just, and they couldn't get anything going. And there was no level of consistency for them until they got into the second half. They found a little bit of success, but by then it was too late.
And every time they panned on Aaron Rodgers, it's like that guy was just getting livid with his offense. Like, he looked like he was getting pissed because, I mean, there were a couple of drops. Lazard dropped a couple. Garrett Wilson dropped a couple. Yeah, he was just getting frustrated. And it's like, man, if you got that vibe in the first game of the season, whoo, boy, you're in trouble.
And the thing is, like, to me, I actually don't have a lot of worries about the Jets long term. I left last night saying this was about the 49ers. Like, I didn't feel like that was a New York Jets-centric issue. And we'll learn over the next 4 weeks. They've got Tennessee, New England, Denver, and Minnesota. And those 4 games, they should not lose a single one of them. They should go 4-0 in the next 4, finish 4-1 through the first 5 weeks prior to their game against Buffalo in week number 6. That should be the way they start the season. And after watching them yesterday, I kind of believe they will. Like, I think Rodgers looked mostly fine. And on a couple of drives, he looked excellent. And if he can get back into the groove of things, that's an unbelievably difficult first-week matchup on the road, going up against a buzzsaw. Good luck, dude. A lot of teams would have had every bit as many troubles, if not more so, against that specific team in that spot. I think the Jets are going to be fine long-term. I felt okay about them coming out of it. T-Bone, what'd you learn last night?
Yeah, I was kind of with you. I thought it was more about the 49ers because I think there were some things you saw with the Jets where you said, okay, I can see where this is going to work for them. Like Rodgers, it didn't look like Aaron Rodgers couldn't play anymore. Rodgers was still slinging the football fairly well. Their defense, I think, will ultimately be fine. They just hit a buzzsaw on the San Francisco 49ers, who just ran the ball up their throat in that game. And they had Mason, who, again, as Alex said, nobody really would have known much about him. Like, I was going to draft him in a fantasy league. I was going to draft him, like, late round, just kind of hope McCaffrey gets hurt, and then Mason takes on that role, like, in week 10.
What did Aikman say on the broadcast? Every fantasy football manager is on the waiver wire right now.
I'll tell you one that wasn't last night.
Who?
Oh, man. Can we get into this real quick?
What's wrong?
What happened, man?
They announced like an hour before game time on Monday night that Christian McCaffrey's going to be out. Are you bleeping kidding me?
Well, if you would have drafted a better team, you wouldn't have to worry about Christian
this
McCaffrey.
Is why I told you guys I didn't want the number 1 pick. I didn't
tried to make up a rule before the draft started.
You didn't have to take him at number 1 overall.
That's true. Tyreek Hill was sitting right there.
I would have gone with Breece Hall if not for him.
He played last night.
He did play last night. I lost by like 30. It didn't matter. But I was hoping that maybe Christian McCaffrey, if anybody was capable of getting a 30 ball, clearly, as we saw from Jordan Mason, who went up there and had like 25, I thought Christian McCaffrey could have been the guy to do it.
If you would have drafted the San Francisco kicker, you still would have put up 30 points.
We didn't have kickers in our league for a reason.
Imagine what we would have had.
To me, that was a night where like I didn't feel great about that as a fantasy football manager.
It's a good BKO start to the season.
I will be curious to see if the league comes out on them after Jordan Mason post-game said, hey, listen, I found out on Friday, I'm going to power through here. I found out on Friday that I'm going to be starting. The league had to hear that and be like, we're going to have to do something. With their partners now in the gambling side of things, like you can't have that. It's unacceptable. And it totally changes the way that people are betting on the games, and there are billions of dollars changing hands.
I guarantee
based upon the game. That line dropped a couple of points because of the Christian McCaffrey injury prior to the start of that game.
And I guarantee there were a ton of parlays that had Christian McCaffrey scoring either an anytime touchdown or the first touchdown of the game.
Now, to be fair, those are just eliminated.
Right.
Like you don't
just
lose
wipe them out
or get your money. It's just wiped out because he didn't play. The plays that are tough, though, are if you had bet one side or the other. If you had one of those sides and then Christian McCaffrey doesn't play, it changes the line. And if they knew on Friday that he wasn't going to be playing, that should have been placed into the injury report of he's just out. He's not going to be participating in this game on Monday. The 49ers did a bunch of damage control after the game. You had the head coach coming out saying, hey, it was just us telling Jordan Mason to be ready. It was just us like making sure he's in the right mental space to be ready to go. We'll see.
Sure.
We'll see what comes out of that. All right, coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, get them in right now. We'll get to Katie Wu coming up here in just a little bit. This one comes from the 314. Alex, if you could change one thing about how the Cardinals organization operates, what would it be? Just one thing, if you could change one thing about them.
Probably more of an emphasis on getting to see the younger players. I especially this season, and I know in the past we've talked about it, fans have been frustrated with it. This season feels like it's brought it more to light in terms of a team that's stuck in the middle, not really sure what direction they're going to go, but still not getting the chance to see guys after they perform at the big leagues level, like a McGreevy, like a Graceffo. And now that you're seeing it in September, I think I'd prefer this team to find a way to put more of an emphasis on a roster.
Aggressiveness. That would be my one thing. Just aggressiveness in general. I would like to see them go out and, like, when Manny Machado or Bryce Harper is available, go. Just go. Push into the middle, right? And say, this is the guy that we're willing to build around, and go all in with that guy. And if it fails, it fails. And at least you went down really trying. Or when you have a situation like this past offseason, Dylan Cease is available. Hey, we've got a bunch of chips. Let's cash them in right now for this. Aggressiveness is something that I think this Cardinals organization really lacks. I think they are far too conservative with their approach, and that is in basically every aspect of the organization. So to me, a lack of aggression, too much conservative nature involved with every decision that they make, that's the thing that I would change.
And mine's kind of in line with that, because to me it's aggressiveness / risk taking.
Sure.
And when I say risk taking, I mean like going out there and saying, kind of like, oh, well, we're going to go sign Blake Snell. He could be the guy that has a 5.6 ERA, or he could go win the freaking Cy Young. I have no idea which one it could be, but it's worth the risk.
Luis Severino, Alex's guy.
Yeah, same
Upside,
with
but
Chris Sale, who we
downside.
talked about in the offseason. That guy could never pitch a game in a Cardinals uniform, and you just gave up a ton of assets for him. Or he could win the NL Cy Young like he's going to do this year for the Atlanta Braves. So that's the one for me, is kind of more creativity, risk-taking, whatever you want to call it. That would be more of what I want to see from him.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 618. Guys, is there a defense that you'd be targeting to pick up this next weekend in fantasy football?
Yeah, anybody playing the Panthers.
Yeah, my
Fair.
typical formula for this is twofold. One, you want a bunch of passes going up against you. So a big-time favorite is always a good side, even if you don't like their defense. A big favorite will get opportunities to rush the passer. That means opportunities to get sacks, fumbles, interceptions. That's where your points come from. And then two, target the terrible offenses. So this weekend, you've got the Chargers going up against the Panthers. That is a game that I would be targeting, potentially the Chargers defense, for example. And then other than that, like the Ravens defense is going up against the Raiders offense. Ravens are probably already picked up in your league, but that would be another one. Chiefs going up against the Bengals could be one that you look at. Eagles against the Falcons is another one that you could look at. Those are a few.
Houston going up against Chicago, too.
Yeah. Yeah, one for me, and I'm sure they are picked up, but probably more for daily fantasy purposes, Pittsburgh against the Broncos.
Oh, yeah.
That'll be all over Bo Nix. He
TJ
didn't look
Watt's
comfortable at all. Yeah, so I
Lions
would
against
say
the
that.
Bucks. Bucks have a decent offense, but the Lions are a 7-point favorite in that one. If they do run away with it, as Vegas is expecting, they should be able to get a decent amount of fantasy points for you as well. So those would be a few that you could potentially target this week on waivers. All right, coming up next, Katie Woo's going to join us, Cardinals insider for The Athletic. If you missed it, there is some news for the Cardinals today. They are expected to call up Thomas Saggese, their infield prospect that they acquired last year at the deadline from the Texas Rangers in the Jordan Montgomery trade. What does that mean? What is his role expected to be? We'll try to get some insight into that with Katie Wu next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario back with you to talk about my friend Tracy Bibb and her team over at Allstate, making sure that they are taking care of you for all of your insurance needs. And right now, it is not an easy market, meaning companies are seeing a lot of rate pressures, so they are increasing the rates. Companies are also canceling people who have had previous accidents. So Allstate is there for you. They have better rates and can write coverage for more situations, even when other companies can't write them for you. So if you need help in the insurance side of things for your car, maybe it's on the home side, maybe you're trying to save a little money, you need to call Tracy Bibb today, because she's always out there to make sure that she gets you the best rates possible. And they preach it's not a matter of if something happens, it's when something happens. And that's where the customer service comes into play, where Tracy is always available for you. Give her a call today. Ask for a free non-committal quote. Super simple. Tracy will walk you through the whole process. Just mention my name, Alex Ferrario, and she'll take it from there. 314-328-4260. Once again, that's 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the Bibb.
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm VK. Happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by our friend, the Cardinals insider for The Athletic. She is Katie Woo, joining us here on the show, as she does each and every week. We moved to Tuesday this week because yesterday the guys were out at the Blues luncheon. I was on the morning show, so we're happy that Katie was able to be flexible with us to come on a Tuesday. Katie, appreciate the time as always. How you doing this morning?
I'm good, guys. You know what? I think we should credit Brooke Grimsley. She just did the morning show, came out, met us all at pickleball, fixed my forehand. She did all this before noon. I mean, what a rock star. So because of Brooke, I'm having a much better day.
You love to see it. Absolutely love to see it. And Katie, the Cardinals are having a decent day because they have decided to call up Thomas Ajacey. You reported that earlier this morning. It sounds like he's going to be joining the big league club. Of course, they acquired him last year at the trade deadline from the Texas Rangers in the Jordan Montgomery deal. Katie, I don't know if you have any insight into this yet on what the plans are with the Ajacey, but what would you anticipate his role being for this team now that he's here?
Yeah, it's a great question. Here's some background information about this Ajacey call-up. So he will be reporting to the major leagues. He'll be with St. Louis today for their series opener against the Cincinnati Reds. How he'll be used and the corresponding move is still to be determined. So the primary reason Thomas Ajacey was called up was to provide some sort of infield depth and flexibility. Brendan Donovan has not been available for the last 2 days because of a foot infection. Mason Wynn, well overdue for a day off, and was actually told that they were going to try to do everything they could to get him a day off today. You look at Mason's numbers, it certainly reflects that he needs a day off. Nothing against him personally. He's just been grinding at a time in his longest season of his career and could certainly benefit from, the off day yesterday and maybe one more day off today. So the Cardinals don't know if Brendan Donovan is going to require an IL stint. They were going to see how he heals over yesterday's off day and have him evaluated before game time today to see so. But what they really would prefer not to do is, with Donovan unavailable and, trying to give Mason Wynn the day off today, they would have to put Jose Fermin at shortstop and Matt Carpenter at second base. They just think bringing up Ajacey would provide a little bit more depth and flexibility in that role. So the corresponding move still to be determined. They'll know more when everyone gets to the park. I mean, they're probably starting to report right about now. So until we know what the corresponding move is, it's pretty hard to dictate what Sajayce's role will be. So hopefully we'll have a little bit more information when we talk to Ollie Marmol in a couple of hours.
Katie, why do you think it took the Cardinals so long to bring these younger guys up that are having success in the minors? We've seen the impact of a Luken Baker. We've seen the impact of a Victor Scott. And now you bring up Thomas Sajayce, and we still haven't seen these pitchers that have made an impact for a short amount of games this season.
I think the short amount of games is what we're focusing on here. Look, the Cardinals for a long time, up until arguably, last week, have been trying to make a playoff push. The numbers are what they are. We are in the standings, writing's on the wall here, so they can shift some of their younger options. It was much easier to do last season when they were 20 games under 500, and they knew the last 8 weeks of the season would virtually not matter. This season, they had a chance up until this weekend, and now they can kind of focus and look towards 2025. But I think the bigger reason is that the Cardinals, and this is not just a Cardinals thing, but a baseball thing in general, we're seeing it a lot in St. Louis, is this push to bring up younger guys. And when they get to the majors, they're still relatively unproven. So we see a lot of guys rush to the majors without really taking into consideration the gap in talent from AAA to the major leagues is bigger than ever. And while Thomas Sajayce's had a great year, 20 homers, 750 OPS, his number of overall at-bats in the minor leagues, there's this push to say, has he had enough so when he gets to the majors, he knows how to weather failure. He knows how to adjust. We've seen this with Victor Scott. His second stint up, Victor Scott is can be an elite center fielder. There are still plenty of things he has to work on to get there. He's doing that at the major league level because he didn't have enough time in the minor leagues to iron out all those kinks. So Sajayce right now, his call-up is more out of need than anything, which is a different problem, I would say. But I think overall you're seeing a reluctance to rely on the younger talent, especially pitching, because you're looking at the numbers in AAA and saying, okay, they're all right for AAA, but the gap from the minors to the majors is so large. If this is what they're doing in the minors, how can we expect them to be any better in the majors? So I think that's where the disconnect is. Also, like I said, guys, it comes down to last year being much more different than this year. Up until last week, they were still pushing for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's a big disconnect, though, between the fans and the organization, fair or otherwise. I think a lot of fans turned the page on this season after that Reds series in mid-August. Meanwhile, the organization continued to say and maintain the stance that we're pushing for the postseason. Katie, how much do you think trying to continue to stay above 500 or at least at 500 and to not have the stat that becomes a headline at the end of the year of, for the first time in 70 years, the Cardinals have gone under 500 in consecutive seasons? How much do you think that is influencing some of what they're doing as well?
Yeah, you're spot on, BK, about the disconnect between the organization and the fan base. Fair or not, that is ultimately what happened.
Sure.
The Cardinals are going to do whatever they can to finish the season with as many wins as possible. There's a lot to play for next year outside of, the record and the stats that you just mentioned. But there's a way to try to maximize your win output while still focusing on preparing players for 2025. I wrote about it on Monday. There are ways to make sure that Jordan Walker is playing every day and giving him the best shot to be prepared for 2025. There is a way to keep Victor Scott fresh and ready and developing at the major leagues, even if he isn't necessarily playing every day. There is a way to make sure Andre Palante has the best possible chance coming into 2025. Of course, he pitches today, and hate to say it, but how he pitches today might necessarily dictate what the rotation looks like going forward. I'm sure we'll get to that. But there are ways to look at these players and give them a chance to kind of get a jump start on 2025 without full pivoting on the season. I think it's unfair to compare how the team operated last year at this point to this year because they still are playing for something, where last year they fully committed to developing. The Cardinals aren't going to punt on the season the way they did 2023. They're just trying to finish with as many wins as possible. But like I said, there are still ways to prep and prime guys for 2025 and spring training next year.
All right, Katie, you brought it up. She's Katie Wu. She's joining us here on 101 ESPN. I promise this is just me asking Katie for insight. I'm not yelling at Katie. This is not her fault. She's the messenger. That's it. She's just explaining what the organizational philosophy is on this stuff. And I have some philosophical differences with the organization on some of these things. Katie, you mentioned Palante. He's going out there today. He is the listed starter against the Cincinnati Reds. There's no chance this is his last start for the Cardinals this season, right? Right? Like, we're not doing that?
It shouldn't be. If you're basing on a performance standpoint, Andre Palante's 3.91 ERA in the second half is lower than Kyle Gibson's, Eric Fetty's, Miles Michaelis, obviously, and Sonny Gray's. So by statistically speaking, he's been the most effective pitcher in the second half for the Cardinals. Now, as we know, things are complicated. However, for Palante, it really shouldn't be that way. Performance-wise and potential for 2025, I think the advantage goes to this guy. But there are contractual obligations at play here. All 5 of 6, actually, if you're considering Steven Matz, of the starters projected for next season are under some sort of contractual obligation, including Gibson and Lance Lynn, who have team options for 2025. Miles Michaelis, Steven Matz, they're in the last years of their deals, and of course, Sonny Gray's locked up through 2026, maybe 2027. So you also have a bunch of veteran guys that maybe, are going to get some sort of preference or advantage based on who they are and what they are in their careers. Would I agree with that? Not necessarily. I think if you're going to say that we're going to try to win as many games, or if you're going to say we're trying to develop for next year, Palante should be in that rotation no matter what. We will certainly see how it goes. I also wouldn't rule out Steven Matz somehow getting another start because the Cardinals like what they've seen out of him. I know it's only been a handful of innings, but the stuff has looked pretty good. Now, the argument for Steven is he hasn't been able to stay healthy for 3 years, and I get that. But if you're going into 2025, you should have some sort of, feel for what Steven Matz can do in that last year. He's looked good. No matter what decision they make, guys, there's going to be some sort of argument for and against it. It's what I feel like will be very interesting about the next 3 or 4 days. They did say they're not going to make a true choice or pick through the rotation until after Lance Lynn pitches on Wednesday because they have to know what Lance looks like in order to operate from there. There's a possibility for a 6-man rotation, though that possibility is very slim. Either way, 2 guys are going to be out of this rotation, and you can make an argument for some to stay, for some to leave. There is just no clear-cut option in the Cardinals' perspective right now.
Way to just take my Steven Matz rebuttal out of the conversation there, Katie. I really appreciate that one. You saw it coming, didn't you? Hey, one more from me, Katie, because John Mozeliak, who's a weekly guest on KMOX, was talking with Tom Ackerman about, the potential. He kind of made a hint that there could be more changes around this team going into next season. We've already seen Gary LaRocque step down as the director of player development. Do you have any insight into kind of what those changes could potentially be after this season?
Reported exclusively right here on 101 ESPN.
Hit us with it, Katie.
No. My speculation, let's clarify this, my speculation is that we'll start to see some sort of shift because, as we know, Mo has said on the record, even dating back to spring training, that 2025 will be his last season, and he'll start the phase-out period. So maybe what you'll see is the implementation of that phase-out period. Their big thing over the offseason right now is finding a new director of player development. There's a lot to be desired about fixing the Cardinals' player development and their minor league systems. So we'll see. I mean, Chaim Bloom is here for a reason. He certainly has a well-respected background in that area. That is definitely something the Cardinals are going to look over the offseason. Also, the majority of the coaches, their contracts are up at the end of the 2024 season. So, with the exception of Ollie Marmol, of course, and Daniel Descalso. So, we'll see what the Cardinals do in that regard. Lots up in the air. It's probably going to depend on how this team finishes in September. That goes back to trying to win as many games as possible. People's jobs are on the line. People's security is on the line. And a lot of what this Cardinals coaching staff has done has flown under the radar in terms of the amount of work they've put in and how extensively they've worked with their players, simply because the record hasn't reflected it. But there are a lot of difficult choices coming up, whether it's coaching staff, minor league staff, front office, and I think it'll be a pretty intriguing offseason. We'll just have to get there first.
She's Katie Wu. We've got a lot more questions for her as we get closer and closer to the offseason, but because the Cardinals operate the way that they do, we're still focusing on the here and now for at least the next 3 weeks. Katie, appreciate the time as always. We'll certainly be reading your work over at The Athletic and following you for all of the latest news on Twitter as well, at Katie J. Wu. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll talk with you again soon.
You got it, guys. See you soon.
You got it. That's Katie Wu joining us as she does each and every week on BK and Ferrario throughout the course of the Cardinal season. Appreciate her time as always. Alex, I think so much of what we talk about with the Cardinals comes back to a point that we've made 100,000 different times over the past 10 years. They lack a superstar position player, and they lack a true number one starter. So stop me if you've heard that one before.
What are you talking about? Did you see those last couple of starts by Steven Matz? We got to find out what he's got still.
Sonny Gray's looked good lately. I'll give him a little bit of credit. That being said, they need at least one of those two different things. Derek Gould had an interesting question that he asked in his chat the other day about that. We're going to get to it and discuss it a little bit on our own coming up next year on 101 ESPN. All right, Alex. So yesterday, in Derek Gould's chat, somebody asked him a question, and I thought it was a good one. They said, what do you think would make the bigger difference for the Cardinals in 2025 and beyond? Getting an ace-level pitcher or a big bopper in the middle of your lineup? And I feel like we've asked some form of this question for like the last decade about the Cardinals, where they needed both, and it became a question of which one do they prioritize. And every offseason, they would go into the offseason like, will they get the big pitcher? And the answer almost always was, no, they're going to prioritize the hitting side of things. The problem, in my opinion, is they prioritized hitters that were over the age of 30. And when you do that, your margin for error is so slim. We talked about this the other day. But, man, when you get a Paul Goldschmidt, like, you better capitalize in those first couple of years, or you're going to get to this version of Paul Goldschmidt. Father time comes for everybody. And for some, it's later than others. It actually waited a while to come for Paul Goldschmidt. We might be seeing it earlier with a guy like Nolan Arenado, where it's happening for him at, like, 33 instead of 36 or 37. So, to me, if you're going to have this question, it's almost like which one would be better? Getting an ace-level pitcher, regardless of age, because they can age a little more gracefully, or a prime in their like mid to late 20s position player who you're getting for their prime years for like the next 5 seasons. Alex, when you have that question asked to you, how would you answer it? What would you prioritize for this team, and what could help them more for 2025 and beyond?
I would prioritize the big bopper. I as great as it sounds to have a Corbin Burnes, and I mean, Corbin Burnes is that ace that we've been talking a lot about. One, I'd be concerned that his best years are starting to get behind him, and you're bringing that in and don't know what the future looks like. But the other thing is, like, you didn't have an ace this season. We all can agree on that. But you at least had a decent pitching staff, and you were still a 500 team. Why? Because your offense is average. I mean, T-Bone and I...
Your offense stinks.
Yeah, we were looking at this yesterday, and, like, you talk about the 22, 23-game stretch where they went up against these juggernauts and they found ways to win. Even through that stretch of games, I didn't look at any of those players and I'm like, oh, damn, look at what this guy did. Like, Lars Nootbaar was good. Paul Goldschmidt was good.
That was about it.
Nothing of the core that we're talking about sits there and goes, oh, wow, he carried you through that stretch. I think what is more impactful for this Cardinals team right now is finding a dude that every single day other teams fear. And I don't think you have that now. I don't think you have that in your system. So as great as a Corbin Burnes would be, I still feel like you'd be spending $200 million on somebody that you're still going to lose a plethora of games when he starts because you're only scoring 2 or 3 runs.
Yeah, I typically am the one that will side on, like, hey, you have to have pitching. Like, I look at October. I know people won't want to hear this, the All-Star game we talked about at the time, like, great pitching will always beat great hitting. But when you get to October, you have to have at minimum an average offense. And that's why I would side with, you know what? I would take the side of they need to get a big bopper for their order, because you couldn't get to October. I don't think you can get to October, and I certainly don't think you can get through October if you don't have guys that can hit. And I think that's their biggest issue right now, because during that 22-game stretch, if you look at what the rotation did, outside of Michaelis, everybody else was pretty good during that 22-game stretch. Fedde had a below 4 ERA. Gray pitched like an ace. Palante was a below 4 ERA. Gibson was below a 4 ERA. Like, you look at those guys, and I can find a way to piece it together with them throughout a regular season and in the playoffs, because you can shorten games with a just elite bullpen, and you can find those guys everywhere. Their biggest issue is they don't have boppers right now. And I think if they were going to go this route and pick one of these lanes this offseason, I think they need to side on the side of, we need to go out there and get a guy that's going to impact the middle of our order that we can pair with Wilson Contreras, and then you can have a legitimate 1-2 combo to potentially carry you through the regular season.
Somebody in the text line said they need their next Albert Pujols to build around. I looked this up earlier today.
Great.
And like when you say they need their next Albert Pujols, like, good luck. Everyone's looking for that guy. But
Cardinals been looking since 2012.
I was curious when the last time was that the Cardinals had a player under the age of 30 that produced back-to-back seasons of like a 30% above league average or better offense, right? Back-to-back season, not just once, because they've had guys that would do this. Tyler O'Neill was one of them. He came in and, hot damn, look at this. This guy is MVP caliber. And then it just never happened again for him. So they've had the one-offs, but back-to-back years of it, it doesn't happen very often around Major League Baseball. But like I just went through earlier, the Phillies had it with Harper. The Mets had it with Duda, Alonso, Nimmo. The Braves had it with Riley, Freeman. The Nationals had it with Soto, Rendon, and then Harper. Marlins had it with Stanton. So, like, these teams, they've had somebody do this within the last decade. Meanwhile, for the Cardinals, the answer is nobody. Nobody since Albert Pujols has done that. Ooh. 30% above league average. I'm not saying you got to go out there and get like a Aaron Judge level offensive producer. 30% above league average is like Wilson Contreras, man. It's a really good offensive season, but not MVP caliber. It's not there. The reason why I bring that up is because that's exactly what this team is missing, man. Somebody in their prime that can do that, and you can just write it in pen for the next 5 seasons that's what you're anticipating out of him. But then I look at what's available, Alex, and this is where it gets really hard is, okay, where do they find that guy? Because you look to the free agency group this offseason. Here are the hitters and the top hitters, top pitchers that are available. Pete Alonso, I don't think he's that.
I don't trust that.
Paul Goldschmidt, he's not that. Anthony Rizzo, he's old. Alex Bregman, he's already showing signs of decline. Willie Adames, I think he's above 30. Juan Soto, they're not paying $500 million. Teoscar Hernandez, he's more of a 5-6 hole hitter. And then on the pitching side of things, maybe Garrett Cole if he opts out. Blake Snell, this team's not doing that. Shane Bieber, he's coming off of an injury. And then Corbin Burns, who I'm interested, certainly, but there's a lot of risk there. And then next year, here are the top guys available. JT Realmuto, no, it doesn't make sense for them because of the catcher position. Same thing for Salvador Perez, also he's old. Vlad Guerrero Jr., who I was brought up in the past. Dylan Cease, Zach Gallen, Kodai Senga. That's it, dude. Like, it's just really hard to find the dude that you plop into the middle of this order and say, that's the guy. And it really does come down to, do the Blue Jays consider trading Vlad Guerrero Jr., and are you as an organization comfortable with that guy being the superstar in the middle of your order? I know T-Bone is not, and I understand it. There's a lot of risk there, both with what you'd have to give up in assets to trade for him and then the contract, but that's where they're at, man. They have not been able to produce this guy internally, and so now you have to go out and spend way more than what you'd be comfortable with to get that guy, or you have to sign one of the pitchers that we're talking about in free agency. I would be prioritizing the position player, though. That would be what I would personally be going after this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is when it's one guy, and by one guy, I mean one guy in a Juan Soto or one guy in a Vladimir Guerrero Jr., you're competing with tons of other teams who need the same thing that you do, and then the price goes up. And then it's hard to believe that the Cardinals are willing to pay that price. But I just, as much as I love the idea of the starting pitcher, I'm more worried and concerned that you don't have the core, you don't have the centerpiece guy to carry your offense moving forward. We thought it was Jordan Walker. I'm still, who knows with that. We thought it was Nolan Gorman. I think he's going to be more of the complementary piece. And then beyond that, you're talking about minor leaguers who might not be impacting this club for 3 to 5 years. So you're going to have to do something that you've never done, get uncomfortable, and make an aggressive move to find that piece. Otherwise, I think you're going to be stuck in the cycle. If you go get the starting pitcher, I still think you're stuck in this cycle. Maybe you get 5-6 more wins. It makes you a playoff team, but I still think you'd be questioning this offense going into a playoff series.
All right, Alex, let's have a little bit of fun with this, because the Cardinals have gotten aggressive in the past at times, and sometimes it comes back to bite them. Not like this, not like what we're talking about here, but they go out and they're like, okay, we're going to make a big trade. And everybody's like, all right, what are you doing? And it's like, oh, we're going to trade for Matthew Liberatore. What'd you give up? Cool, great. Sounds good. He's a top 100 prospect, left-handed pitcher. Sounds great. We traded the guy that everybody was chanting on the radio to see him called up, and Randy Rosarena. What? Why'd you do that? So people get upset about these things sometimes. Well, in Cleveland, they're not thrilled right now about the Deshaun Watson situation, as you can imagine. Yesterday, their sports radio morning show in Cleveland decided to open the phone lines and to hear from their audience.
Dangerous game. I've played
This was the first call on Cleveland sports radio coming off of what was a disastrous weekend for their aggressive move where they decided to go out and acquire Deshaun Watson.
216-474-0092. You ready to go to the phones?
Sure.
All right. Dave in Macedonia, you're first up in the fan. Hello.
Good morning, boys.
All right.
He's quoting Daniel Caffey. Please. There's two numbers. You'll figure them out. 42.9, 144.
What is all this?
Watson's quarterback rating Mayfield's quarterback
Christ.
rating.
Oh, Christ. I can't do this
Hold
for
on.
one more second. No, that's enough. That's enough. The first call out of the box, we're going to do this. The very first call out of the box, we're going to do this. No. I know what his quarterback rating was. I know that he was good. Guys, I'm not doing it right out of the damn box. Can I have a little bit of time before we do this? Can I have a little bit of time? That he ain't coming home. He ain't coming back. Only to play us. That's it. He had a great day down there. Congratulations on all his success. I can't undo the trade. I can't undo it. You ready to go to another one? Go ahead.
God, I feel for that guy.
We've all been there. Everybody in this room at some point has been there. What's the trade that does that for you with the Cardinals?
Randy A.
That gets you to that point as a host.
Randy Rosarena. Every single time. I'm so sick of it. I'm done. Yeah, it's a terrible trade, and the Cardinals suck at not evaluating players and giving them a chance to succeed. That one is my Baker Mayfield.
I'm with you as well because it ties into like everything. Oh, he traded Cardinals. Like, oh, he didn't get an opportunity to be like Randy A. No, he did. He had like 1,000 plate
excuse
appearances
for every player that gets traded. They didn't give him a chance to play.
Yeah, like that's the one. And it's not even so much the Randy A trade. It's just it always gets tied back to that one, and it frustrates the hell out of me.
For me, it is the Marcell Ozuna deal.
Yeah, that was up there.
You're
too.
never going to be the Marcell Ozuna deal because it made so much sense. Like, I still think they were correct in making that move, and it couldn't have gone worse, dude. The guy is putting up MVP caliber numbers this season again. And for whatever reason, his shoulder, like, disassembled from his body for the 2 years that he was here.
Cardinals thought he was a gold glove outfielder.
They didn't have the DH that they could have plopped him into for a couple of seasons at that point. If they were just 5 years later on making that trade, everybody would look back and be like, hot damn, gave up a lot, but all right, that guy's an MVP caliber hitter. He's exactly what they've been lacking. Like, if you just transition his numbers from what he's done in Atlanta and just put those here instead and get rid of all the off-field stuff as well. Yeah. It would have been a pretty good move. Disappointing with what you gave up, but a pretty good move for what the Cardinals needed. Unfortunately,
I think we should open up the phone lines, PK. What do you think? Let's open them up.
It's not the lesson I learned from that clip.
That wasn't it?
That wasn't it? I thought that was great content. Who wouldn't love to hear me or BK lose our mind like that?
I can't imagine doing sports radio right now in Cleveland because there's
nothing to get excited about.
Future.
No.
Like, you're just stuck for 3 years, man.
Yeah.
They've already been doing this for multiple seasons, and for the next 3 years, they're stuck with that imbecile. Like, there's no getting out of the contract. It's $170 million against the cap next year if they cut him. $170 million. Dude, the cap's like $200 and something million. It's just Deshaun.
Yep.
And so he's got to be a part of the... He's got to be a part of their roster long term, and they're building around him, and there's just nothing you can say that's going to change anybody's opinion until he plays better, and he ain't playing better, dude. He's broken. That guy is not getting any better.
Yeah. Well, at least they get the Guardians, one team that can win.
Kind of. I mean, they
only they cared about him.
They don't have any pitching, which is weird because they've always had the pitching but no hitting, and this year they have the hitting but no pitching. It's the bizarro Cardinals.
At least they have the Cavs.
That's true. Fresh off of
is that a good thing?
They're at least competitive.
They've got the Blue Jackets that aren't too far away, kinda.
Well, they're exciting somewhat. It's sad that they might be the most exciting team that they got in Ohio right now, at least around the Cleveland area.
They've got Ohio State.
Okay,
There we
cool.
go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Choking the playoffs like they always do.
Yeah.
Coming up next, we got our Pick'em reveal. I did pretty well this week. Alex did not. We'll tell you about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Quarterback rating.
Oh, Christ. I can't do this
Hold
for
on.
one more second. No, that's enough. That's enough. The first call out of the box, we're going to do this.
Terrence here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals back in action tonight as they start a 3-game set with the Cincinnati Reds. 6:45 will be first pitch as Andre Prolante will get the start for the St. Louis Cardinals. And according to our Cardinals insider, Katie Wu, the Cardinals will be selecting the contract of Thomas Saggese today. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, if you're new to this, the way that we do this each and every Friday on BK and Ferrario is we will give you 3 picks. Alex will give you 3, T-Bone will give you 3, I give you 3. We rank them 1 to 3, so there's a possible 6 points every weekend. Very simple. It's against the spread, no props, no point totals, anything like that. We'll give you 3 games against the spread every single weekend that we believe will cover. And then the following week, we will react to what we ended up getting over the weekend. This weekend, I did very well. Now, this is a rarity. Normally, if you fade my picks, you're feeling pretty good about it. This weekend, I had 5 picks that I really liked. I went with 3 of them for our show. I went 5 for 5. So here's what we start with. Alex, you and I went head-to-head on one of our picks. It was my 1-point play. And I loved the Colts this weekend. Now, this was a minor miracle for me that I did end up covering. But Alex has said all offseason, love the Texans. That's my squad. Let's take a listen to how this went. I have been talking all offseason about one of my sleeper teams. And I cannot go into week 1 where they are a 3-point home underdog and not pick them. Give me the Colts plus the 3 points at home against the Houston Texans.
I'm taking the Texans are minus 3 points.
One we're against each other.
I looked at this
I like it.
differently.
Congrats, Ferrario, you won.
Mixon, head of steam, running left, takes it in for a touchdown. Joe Mixon having a big day here on opening Sunday of the 2024 season.
Feel good about that one. Anthony Richardson completes all of 9 passes, and they somehow put up 27 points.
This game was beyond infuriating. Like, I was holding my baby daughter at the time, and I was yelling nonstop. Like, I thought this defense was improved, and then now all of a sudden we're just letting Anthony Richardson a Hail Mary for 60 yards for 2 separate drives down the field for touchdowns. This should have been an easy cover for me. This was the one that pissed me off.
Yeah, the Texans played okay in this game. Running game looked really good. Joe Mixon was clearly a nice addition for them going into the offseason. The Colts' run defense was abysmal. It was terrible in this game.
I liked the Houston's offense. I think it's going to be fine. Defense, I thought they improved, and no, they did not.
I think they might have. I think that's what the Colts are going to be. I think there's going to be times where they're infuriating to watch, where they just do nothing, and then suddenly, boom, 70 yards over the top. Like, that's going to be, I think, the Colts' offense this year. And at the end of the day, did they get the big plays or not? If they did, it'll be a big game for them offensively, and if not, they'll lose, 27-13.
Yeah.
Liked the way that went for me. Got lucky a little bit with the cover, but did get my 1-point play. My 2-point play is one that me and T-Bone both agreed on. I think Nebraska has a quarterback.
Whoa.
Raiola looked amazing. And I think anytime that you see Colorado play this year, you're going to get a little value on the other side. Because Colorado is a very public team because of Deion Sanders and all of the hoopla that surrounds that circus of a team. Give me Nebraska as a 7-point favorite at home against the Colorado Buffaloes.
Man, the Buffaloes, way back when, used to roam the countryside. They won't be roaming in Nebraska this week. So, yeah, I'm with you. Give me Nebraska minus the 7 against Colorado.
Raiola, here comes a safety blitz, gets rid of it. Almost intercepted, then caught, and a touchdown, Romeo Johnson.
How about that one, boys? That was a nice pick right there. Colorado stinks.
Just start betting against Colorado every single week.
They're a bad football team, and you watch them, and the only thing that gets discussed is, like, this weekend even, they somehow did it again, where they're doing this, like, magic show. They've got this sideshow of, hey, but wait, look at did you see the press conferences after the game where Shador called out his team? It's like, no, did you watch the game itself where they were bad and they got blown out by Nebraska on the road and once again looked completely underprepared to go out there and play a football game against, I think, a really solid Nebraska team, if not a great one. I think they're good.
Like an 8-win team.
Yeah. That's a team you should be competitive against if you're going to be solid this year and, like, bowl eligible. Colorado's not that. Colorado's like a 4-win football team right now. So, yeah, felt good about that one coming out of the weekend. So I got a nice 2-point play there. T-Bone got 3 points by picking Nebraska in that one. My final pick of the week was on the NFL side. We had to wait a little while to get here, and we had to wait a little while into the game to get the cover, but ultimately we did. I think there's a chance the LA Rams have one of the worst defense. Love Detroit, minus the 4.5 points against the LA Rams. That is my 3-point pick going into the week.
First and goal for the one. It is Montgomery. It is a Detroit Lions overtime win.
All right, we waited until overtime to see them really maul their way down the football field, but that's exactly what we got. Win the Rams, wins it in overtime against the Lions. Lions win that one 26-20. So I got all 6 points this weekend. Nice 3-0 start to the year for me in our Pick'em Challenge. Let's get to T-Bones real quick. T-Bone started in the NFL. He picked a game that Alex agreed with him on, an underdog on the road. That ended up winning outright.
My 1-point play, and it's another one of those classics, like, I don't understand this line. Dude. I think both these defenses are great. I don't trust Deshaun Watson in this game. Give me the Cowboys plus 2.5 on the road against the Browns.
That's my 3-point play.
I remember scrolling through the NFL lines. I went, Cowboys plus? Oh, hell yeah. Give me that. How about them Cowboys? Free money, baby.
Turpin racing up the middle. Uh-oh. Kavontae Turpin needs one more block. He's got it. And he goes for the touchdown. How about them Cowboys?
Should have just made that on all 3 of my picks and just go 6 points there. That was the easiest bet that we could have come up with.
I couldn't believe they were an underdog in that game.
I couldn't either. I didn't know what Vegas knew. Like, what did they know in that game that they thought was going to go their direction?
I think it goes back to what we've been saying all along, where the Cowboys are this team that people conflate what they do in the postseason with what they do during the regular season. I'm pretty sure I saw a stat the other day. Over the last 3 years, they're top 3 in the NFL in regular season victories. The Cowboys are a really good regular season team. They just always fail once they get to the postseason.
Well, but it's like, even with that, like, you look at Cleveland, what is there? Like, I guess you're hoping defensively they keep them down. And look, the first couple of drives for Dallas, Cleveland was all over. Myles Garrett had Dak's number. But, like, you look at it, you don't have Nick Chubb. You have Deshaun Watson, which kind of is a liability right now for them on the field. Okay,
it's
a liability.
Quarterback I watched this week.
I mean, that dude was throwing to players sitting on the sideline that weren't playing.
Hey, CeeDee Lamb was open.
I think I heard Stoltz say, like, maybe he can't see properly on the field because he's throwing all over the place.
LASIK worked for his backup now, and Jameis Winston. Maybe we should.
Well, they should go get it. Should go get last year's backup and see if Joe Flacco will come back because woof.
Yeah, I never understood that line, but I was afraid that it was a trap. But I couldn't figure out what the trap was because I had no faith in Deshaun Watson. And to your point, like, I took the under in that game. I can't remember if it ended up hitting or not. But I thought for sure, like, this slugfest, like 16-13, maybe that's what Vegas was looking for, somewhere in that range. But, man, when Watson plays like that, they had no chance in that game.
Pretty sure that game went over. I think it was like a 40-42, something like that.
Dallas ran away with it.
So that was the 1-point play for T-Bone, 3-point play for Alex. T-Bone went to the college side of things and got a big win that he never really had to sweat with his 2-point play.
This program, they got so upset when they were in the Big 12, when everybody flashed their signal, their Longhorn signal, man. They got upset. Big 12 made it a penalty. Well, guess what? They ain't going to have to cry about that this week, and they're going to kick the crap out of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Give me the Texas Longhorns, -7 on the road against Michigan.
Mueller swings it out. Near side, Blue. Touchdown, Texas. Jaden Blue. How simple can it get for the Longhorns?
Nice pick, T-Bone. Was that more about Texas or Michigan, in your opinion?
More about Michigan. When I did it, I thought Texas was a good team, but Michigan struggled against Fresno State.
When you watched it, though, did you feel, looking back now, did that game,
I think
the Florida State game, we've said a few times, Florida State versus Boston College, did it tell us more about BC or Florida State? I think it was more about Florida State. How did you feel about this one between Texas and Michigan?
Now I feel it is, okay, Texas is one of the top tier programs in college football. I think Sark's got them. I think they're right there with Georgia. I feel like we're on a collision course for a Georgia-Texas national championship, and I'm willing to declare that 2 weeks into the season. And I think Ohio State probably up there in Tier 1 as well, but I haven't seen them beat anybody. Leaving that game, I went, holy crap, because I think Michigan's probably a 10-9-win team. They're not as good as they were a year ago, clearly. Texas just rolled in there and no hesitation just kicked the crap out of them, just like Georgia did to Clemson.
Imagine if they had their better quarterback playing, too. So T-Bone finishes 3-0 as well, a 6-point week for him. Alex has 1 game remaining that he picked. He did hit one of his picks with a 3-point play, Cowboys against the Browns. Did he get his college football pick of the week? Let's find out. What is your 1-point pick?
Oregon -18.
Wow.
I think as bad as Oregon looked in week 1, that was a anomaly, and I think Dan Lanning is going to have that team ready to go.
A 25-yard field goal. Sappington for the win to rally and beat Boise State. Movement of the line. There's the flag. Kick is up. The kick is good. Oregon survives.
37-34, that does not cover the 18-point spread at home against Boise State. Ashton Jeanty is probably the best college football player that I've watched so far this year. He's the running back for Boise State. If you were doing any kind of a Heisman poll right now, he'd probably be the current leader. He was unbelievable in that game so far on the season through 2 games, guys. 45 carries for 460 yards and 9 touchdowns. An unbelievable start to the season for him. Unfortunately, a bad start to the year for Alex in our Pick'em Challenge. He got 3 points in week 1. So me and T-Bone feeling good after week 1. 3-0 start, 6 points in total. Alex, how you feeling after a 1-2 start on the year? You did get your 3-point play, get your 3 points, but off to a sluggish start in our Pick'em Challenge.
Slow start, I'll admit it, but I'm okay with it because that Texans one, I mean, one stop and I had that covered. So
That's not how it works.
The Oregon one, I got false information. So I stay away from college football. I do this every year, and I say I'm cocky, and I'll do it once, and then it falls, and then I just stay with the NFL.
When you made that Oregon pick at the time, I remember thinking, oh boy, I don't know about that one, because Boise State's a team that could potentially be a college football playoff team that comes out of the group of 5. And they did not play well against Idaho the week prior. I was worried for you.
Yeah.
And then I started watching that game at about a quarter, and I was like, oh, he's so screwed.
Yeah.
Oregon's one of those teams that I don't understand what we've seen from them thus far. It doesn't make sense to me. Now, they're 2-0, so they avoided disaster, but I really like their quarterback. I like their coach. I think that one, to kind of follow the theme of who did we learn more about, I think that one told us more about Boise than it did about Oregon. But week 1 is kind of throwing me off the scent because Oregon had a weird week 1 as well.
Oregon's got an offensive line problem. Honestly, a defensive line problem. They got a line problem right now, and I'm a little concerned about
That's the thing that we always underrate going into the season because we have a tough time evaluating it on the outside looking in is, okay, Oregon had a couple of NFL offensive linemen last year that ended up going to the league. What does that mean? How are they going to replace them? And is it going to be a problem? And then we all fall in love with, well, they got the quarterback. They got these weapons. And we look at the fantasy football side of things. You get into the season, they're getting crushed on the offensive and defensive lines. You're like, oh, well, that's how they end up not making it to the college football playoff. That could be a potential huge issue for them.
I'll have a comeback, though. So this happens. Start off slow. Just give me one more week, and I'll get back into the conversation.
You know anything about me?
Yeah, one of you is going to fall flat.
I will find a way to go 0-3 here over the next couple of weeks. I did do well in our Fast Lane Pick'em Challenge as well, by the way.
Did you?
I did. I had a good week. Marshy's the one.
Didn't you get right?
Yeah, Marshy's the one that ended up having the lowest score for us. I think that we ended up winning the week over the ratio as well. Fast Lane will get into that more later on this afternoon. So getting off to a hot start, boys.
I did not do well when it came to picking games over the weekend. I missed, I think, like 4 or 5. I think actually maybe even 6. But, man, good for you. I thought for sure that you'd be the guy.
I'm good when I have less information. Once we get into the season, though, and I have more information to analyze, I get paralysis by analysis is a problem for me.
BK starts to get real excited after that first win.
You guys know I have performance anxiety. Coming up next, we're going to dive into the junk drawer here on 101 ESPN. Boys, my neck hurts today. I've got to talk about this wedding we went to over the weekend. Yeah.
What did you do at a wedding at your neck? Oh, this guy. That's my son!
You're really headbanging out there?
I am officially determined that I'm old and washed. And this weekend was my real moment where I was like, all right, it's happened. I'm done.
I just turned 34. It's the worst.
Dude. So, the wedding, you're dancing, having a good time, whatever, right? And then you wake up the next morning and you're like, I hurt in places I didn't know I could hurt. And I wasn't getting crazy with it, right? It's Kara's coworkers. That's who we went to this wedding with. So it wasn't like this is a bunch of high school or college friends that you've gone out with in the past. No, this was a group of individuals that you know more professionally than on a personal level.
You have to button it up a little bit.
I'm over there after having, a few gin and tonics. And
well.
Yeah.
The real question is, what were you headbanging to?
Yeah.
Oh, the usual, mid-2000s alt-punk.
Stuff I've never heard of.
Well, as long as it was
I
worth
still don't remember the song he was doing.
Was it worth the headbanging?
Black Parade.
Never heard of that song. Still don't know that song. No.
Really? I've heard of it.
Yeah.
I don't get
the
that.
only time I've ever heard a reference is when we refer back to you dancing.
Okay.
I've heard
Alex, when you go to weddings, are you a hitch, stay right here, home base guy?
No, it's either all in or nothing at all.
Off of the dance floor or on the dance floor, but just kind of standing there?
Standing
off
awkwardly.
the dance floor.
Really?
If it's if it would have been in the same scenario as you, where it's work people, I wouldn't have been dancing. I don't dance at weddings that they're family members or close friends. So if I go and it's not that, Katie and I will go out there for a couple of slow dances, and that's about it.
Even if you get a few sodas in you?
Yeah. Well, and I typically don't drink at those types of weddings because I don't want to make an ass of myself in front of people that
Oh, no. You're never going to see them again. It's cool.
Well, but I mean,
that's what you think.
Yeah, that's what you just did. But for family and close friends, then it's whiskey and cokes all night, and it's on the dance floor, and it's all out. By the end of the night, my shirt is soaked from sweating.
Yeah, that's where I was at, man.
Yeah. There's no in between for me at weddings. It's either I'm not going to dance, I'm just going to sit and enjoy the music, enjoy one drink, and just go slow dance with Katie, or it's I'm going all out. Yeah, typically Soldier Boy is the one that gets me. That's
really,
dude.
I didn't know that
game
about
over.
You.
If Crank That Soldier Boy comes on, it is game over for everybody on the dance floor.
We've all got that one song. Yep. You guys saw mine. We've all got that. Everybody's got one song. For some people, it's the electric slide. It's a specific dance song that they're gotta be out there for this.
Who have you seen get excited for the electric slide?
People love it.
Really?
Yeah,
it's a crowd
I've seen people go crazy
That's
about it.
wild,
it's
man.
One way or the other, though. For some people, at their own wedding, they will tell their DJ, "Hey, do not play the electric slide. Do not play the classic dance songs. Not interested in that. We're just gonna play the stuff that we want to hear." For other people, it's yo, all of the dance songs. Get people out on the dance floor. It's a crowd pleaser.
Yeah, there's not one song that gets me out there. I don't dance at a wedding. I don't go out on the dance floor. I will just sit at the table and I'll talk with people, or I'll kind of walk around and talk with people.
You're a patio guy. I could see T-Bone, if there's a patio available, he's going out there smoking a cigar, finding some 60-year-old man that he's going to learn about the wedding with.
That's a fun time. Yeah, I'm not out there on the dance floor.
I'm telling you.
I got nothing to prove.
I'm telling you, Crank That Soldier Boy comes on, I'll be in the front right next to the DJ, and I will be doing the entire dance. I don't care. That one, I guess I should say Bye 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 is the other one. If you put on Bye 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 from NSYNC, oh yeah, I got that.
Is that a dance song?
Yeah, it's from Deadpool.
I know. Well, okay, that's fair,
the music video.
Even then, I don't even think that is a really big dance song.
Well, if you were in the 90s, early 2000s, and you watched every video of it and learned the dance step by step, you would.
You know what I also learned over the weekend at this wedding is that I didn't realize how much people love, and I mean love, Chappell Roan. Had no idea, dude. I knew that there was a moment that was happening with her and some of her music. Dude, this group went nuts.
Who was it again?
Chappell Roan. She's a relatively
I thought you were talking about
new.
A location.
I don't know who that is.
Okay, she's a relatively new pop star. I guess kind of pop star, I don't even know what she would consider.
Is that JoJo Siwa?
I don't think so, no.
I don't know who that is. That's just the name apparently everybody says.
She's from Missouri, but she's become kind of a big thing, and this group went nuts when her songs came on.
Interesting.
So that's interesting.
Never heard of her.
Pink Pony song that people were very excited about.
I know Genuine's Pony. That's a different type of pony song, though.
I think it's similar, actually.
Is it? I was going to say, because, I'll get down with the, What was the movie Channing Tatum was in?
Marshy just texted me. HOTTOGO. That's the big song. Hot to go.
I have no idea. Kids these days,
Marshy's
am I
actually
right?
told me to listen to that. I never did go and listen to
This
it.
is the whole.
She's having a moment. Who would have known?
This is the whole like I don't listen to music or go out to
Marshy's the
clubs
guy
anymore.
But Marsh is the guy that's on the dance floor no matter what.
Me and Marshy.
Yeah.
We'll cut a rug
Yeah.
together.
See, I think Marshy's probably like keeps it contained until it's the one song.
No chance. I went to a
from start
concert
to
with
finish.
Marshy. I promise you, that guy is dancing on the dance floor from start to finish.
I've never
I would be
been to a
pissed
concert
if I
with
went to a wedding with Marshy.
I guess that's
and he
true.
was just sitting over at the table
Marshy
or on the patio with T-Bone.
Marshy seems like he's got to warm up to it though.
No
Not
chance.
like the start to finish.
I think Marsh would
What's
send it.
Jackson's move?
Oh,
at a
his is
wedding?
the shopping cart.
Oh, no, but he's on the dance floor, right?
No, I don't think
We're
so.
all in agreement?
No, no.
He
Jackson's.
talks about
think
he talks a
Jackson
big
would.
game about being the best bachelor in St. Louis or something crazy. No.
Are you
no
saying you're the
chance.
big best bachelor in St. Louis?
No.
For sitting on the
He doesn't
patio?
even go on the dance floor.
I got no, and I'm not trying to say I am. I'm
I
just
think-
saying it's false information that Jackson thinks he is.
I think Jackson's at the table talking the entire time.
I think maybe he goes
I
out
don't
there
think
for
so.
like one or two songs. I don't think he's like just full on going out there.
I think Jackson's like Alex. I think Jackson probably depends on the crew.
Trying to leave as soon as possible.
Only if it's the wrong type of wedding. If it's the right type of wedding, I'm there from start to finish.
Oh.
Magic Mike, by the
Thanks,
way.
man.
He left early
I
in yours.
stayed actually longer than what I typically do. I stayed beyond the food at your wedding. Typically, if it's somebody that I don't care, we eat
Beyond the
and we
food.
leave.
Wait, hold on. Beyond the food. That's
That's
very
terrible,
long.
man.
That's what we do.
Such a bad
Sometimes
move.
I feel.
I don't like
if you're-
weddings. I don't know why this is a
don't
surprise
go.
to people.
Just say we'll politely decline.
well, no, I want to at least show my support. I'll go
just
and
go
I'll
to the
eat your food.
ceremony.
Pay a little
Everybody's
more.
invited to the ceremony. They don't have to pay for you to go.
But why is it that big of a deal if I don't want to stay
Leaving-
for the dancing?
leaving-
Because that's what the whole the reception, the part that everybody enjoys is that.
No,
part.
you go for the speech. You go to watch the dances.
Nobody
you go
goes
to
for
give
the
your
speech.
gift. That's
I've
the
never
support
heard a
side of
single
it.
person say, "You know why I want to go to this reception? For the speeches."
Yeah, I can't
the
wait to hear
speeches,
what
and
they
the
say.
food
Around
are the
next
two
wedding you
things
go
that I'm
to.
gonna
It's
remember.
all the old people that stand up and leave once the music
I don't
starts,
even-
and that's who
were,
I am.
Were speeches at your wedding? They were, right?
Yeah.
I don't even remember them. No.
We did them as
always
quick
go
as
for
we
that.
did them like while people were eating as quick as
Yeah,
we
that's
could
right. Yeah.
because we wanted to like, hey,
Yeah, that
let's
makes
get these
sense.
things going, let's get it going,
And that's
then
great for me
boom.
because the faster you go, the faster I get
Yeah,
home.
If you're going to try and leave before the food, if
No,
that was
not
like your
before the
goal-
food. I go and I eat the food. I watch the speeches. I watch the first dance. We leave after the first dance. If they're not family or close friends. If they're family or close friends, I'm there the whole night. You got the in-between. But at the time, we had only worked together for like, what, 6-7 months?
Yeah, and then Alex complained for the next 3 years that I didn't invite him to my bachelor party, even though he was there and invited. T-Bone was the one that was.
I wasn't
I
invited.
complained
I'm
that
still
you
upset about
invited
it.
me to your bachelor party.
I'm not inviting BK to mine. I don't care how long we've worked together.
Alex was invited to my bachelor party and showed up with his wife and kid.
Oh, boo. Boo.
They didn't go to the bachelor party. We were doing the
There for
next
3
day.
hours. Alex came out to Memphis for a family vacation and stopped by my bachelor party. That's unbelievable.
And I went and I stayed out till about 1:30 in the morning with you guys.
Coming up next,
says
how
I'm
much
not
has the
fun?
perception of this Mizzou-Boston College game changed now that both teams are ranked in the top 25? We'll talk about it here on 101 ESPN. Alex, we had some good success last week on our parlays here on BK and Ferrario, and I'm feeling good going into this NFL weekend as well. The exclusive betting partner for BK and Ferrario is Circa Sports in Illinois. Download the app today. They've got the best odds possible for you. That's what they are really known for. They recommend check out DraftKings, check out FanDuel. You will find that you're going to win the most money possible over on Circa Sports in Illinois. Alex, I've got a 2-leg parlay going into this week. Bills plus 1.5 on the road against the Dolphins. I think they win this one outright. And then I like the Colts minus the 3 points against the Packers. This is on the road. They're going up against Malik Willis and the Packers. I think that the Colts end up winning that one outright. Win by more than 3. It's 2.5 to 1. Bet $10. Win 25. Love it over on Circa Sports in Illinois.
I love both those, BK. Put them together as that big parlay. Get the most money possible because Circa Sports is not limiting you based off of your winnings. Plus, you get actual people to speak with when it comes to their customer service at Circa Sports. It's the best app for all of your sports betting needs. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Alex, when Mizzou's schedule came out and we saw Boston College in week 3, I think all of us did the same thing. You go down the schedule, you're like, win, win, win. And that's what I did for the Boston College game. I didn't even really give it much of a second thought. And now you go into this weekend, and the only game on Saturday in all of college football that is between two teams currently ranked in the top 25 is Mizzou versus Boston College. So here's my question for you. How much for you has the perception of this game changed between Mizzou and Boston College compared to where you were with it 2-3 weeks ago prior to these teams being ranked?
I still view it as a win. And if it's a loss, I think that's a massive blow to Missouri. Even that they are ranked, I don't view Boston College as a team that should even come close to beating Mizzou. It does create more intrigue for me, though, because anytime you get a ranked opponent, I think it says more about the team if you can go out there and just wipe away any expectation of that team actually being a ranked squad, like Boston being number 24. The excitement level's there. I still view this, though, as a Mizzou win without question because I don't know if Boston College's offense is going to be able to compete with Mizzou's defense. And that, for me, is why I look at this as I think this is just another easy W for the Mizzou Tigers and have them at 3-0.
Yeah, I still put this down as like a guaranteed W, and, you know, good teams cover the spread. I think they should win by what the spread is. I think it's 16.5. They should win by more than 2 scores in this game. Maybe I'm underselling Boston College because, yes, they did beat Florida State, but then they've got to win against an FCS team. I just don't think Florida State's good. I think what you're seeing a lot of the hype around Boston College to get their momentum into the top 25 is a lot of, hey, we just don't really know what everybody is yet, and everybody still has in the back of their mind that, oh, Florida State probably still a 10-9 win team, so that's a good win for Boston College. When in reality, I think there's a chance Florida State's like a 7 or 8 win team. And I still think Boston College, probably best case scenario is that. I don't feel like this is oh, wow, they're in the top 25. Maybe this is a tougher game. No, I still think this should be one of those that you should be able to write in pen. It's a W next to Missouri's name.
Yeah, here are some of the games this weekend, top 25, with at least one top 25 team in them that have a shorter odds. So, like, Mizzou is a 17-point favorite in this game. These teams are all less than 17-point favorites in their respective games. Bama versus Wisconsin, LSU versus South Carolina, Oregon versus Oregon State, OU versus Tulane, who had a really good game last week and probably should have won against K-State. Yeah. And then Notre Dame against Purdue is a smaller favorite than Missouri is against Boston College. I think what this tells you is that Boston College is just probably overvalued right now. And that's no shot against them. I think this is a better measuring stick for Missouri than I anticipated it being at this point in the season. We'll probably learn some stuff, especially about Missouri's defense in this game. So far this year, they have not allowed a point. I don't think that will be the case on Monday morning whenever we start breaking down Missouri versus Boston College.
How great would it be if it was?
Well, then we'll be talking about Missouri having one of the top 5 defenses in the country, most likely, if that's the case. But it'll tell us a lot about their run defense, especially because Boston College ran wild against Florida State earlier this season. And they do have a quarterback that can run all over the place. The guy is incredibly shifty. So coming out of this game, I do think we'll be able to actually learn some stuff about Mizzou. And I remember a few years ago, one of the lowest points of the Eli Drinkwitz era was when Missouri went to Boston College. I think this was in 2021, if I'm not mistaken. Connor Bazelak was the quarterback at the time, and they lost that game in overtime. It was just horrible. It felt awful as a fan afterwards. You're like, well, what's the hope that remains now after that loss? So going into this one, I think they're going to be highly motivated. I do think they win. I think there's a decent chance that they cover, but I think it's almost being overly amped up. And I think this is good for Mizzou, that they will not overlook this game because of the anticipation that's going into it. But I think nationally, people are probably going to put a little bit more investment in it than we will locally, just because I don't think Boston College is as good as the 24 would indicate next to their name right now.
Yeah, I think that's the part I'm most curious about. I do want to see steps forward with this offense. It does still feel like Cook is just a little off with some of his receivers, and I'd like to see that take a step forward. But this, to me, is all about solidifying what your defense is, because Murray State, Buffalo, great that you posted those shutouts. But, man, if you can go out there and hold down this Boston College offense that did put 28 up against Florida State, again, I'm curious what they look like. I think we're going to be talking more about this defense. And if your defense is in the conversation of being one of the best in the SEC after this week, I think that's what really takes you to the 11-win conversation this season.
So that's a big game for Mizzou this weekend. College football-wise, big picture. One of the things that I felt like last week kind of signified for the rest of the season is this going to be a year of the upset? Are we going to see a lot of teams that are ranked in the top 10 to 12 that you leave the week and you're like, all right, finally into the college football playoff conversation, and then boom, next week they find a way to lose? Do you feel that way, Alex? Do you feel like this has the chance to be a year where you get a bunch of upsets? Northern Illinois, for example, this past weekend against Notre Dame. There were some close calls with Oregon barely being able to take down Boise State. Penn State was struggling for a while against Bowling Green. They were down against the fighting Connor Bazelaks. Is this going to be a year where it's hard to really put your finger on the pulse of who these teams are in the top 10 to 12?
I think so. I think what we talked about earlier in the show of being the top three dominant teams, and then you've got this next year, it feels like, I mean, we were a couple of possessions away from a couple of other upsets. You mentioned Oregon with Boise State. The other one that I'm still waiting for an upset at some point is Alabama. I'm still not sold on Alabama being this dominant force right now in college football. This feels like every week we're going to be talking about a team that was ranked in the AP polls, or at least considered to be in the AP poll top 25, takes a bad loss, and you're thinking, uh-oh, what happened here?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a chaotic year, because I think they're in that top tier. For me, it's just two teams. It's Texas and Georgia. I think Ohio State can get there. They haven't played anybody yet, though. You know, I've seen Texas and Georgia play maybe not great teams, but some really good teams, and win significantly and easily. So Ohio State might fall into that category. But for me right now, it's like 3 through like 35, you know. I think it is a wide open field, and I think all those teams have something that they are lacking in to where they can lose to anybody on any given day. Like Notre Dame, though it was shocking they lost to Northern Illinois, if you watch their win against A&M, their quarterback really struggled in that game. Leonard did not look comfortable at all. What happens? He plays poorly. They lose to Northern Illinois. You look at every team, basically 3 through 25, there's some sort of flaw that you can point at on their roster, and it's something that I think is going to lead to some chaotic scenarios as we get later and later into the season. I think you're going to see nobody really settle into that second tier until really late in the year, and then maybe some of those assurance, like Missouri, for example, maybe they end up settling into that second tier because the offense, what he mentioned with Brady Cook, where he looks a little off, that settles in, boom, they fall into that second tier, but they're still probably a 1-2 loss team.
I think a lot of this is the consolidation of power. Like the fact that you now have two conferences where the vast majority of these top contenders are coming from means that they're going to have to play against each other. So you're just going to have teams that topple over one another. It's like if you're in the the National League West right now, right? Like the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Diamondbacks are all going up against each other, 17 times over the course of the season. That's going to lead to a lot of losses just against one another, just by virtue of the way that the scheduling works. The same thing is going to be true this year in the Big Ten and in the SEC. The top 9 teams in the country right now are from one of those two conferences. 13 of the top 17 teams in the country are from either the Big Ten or the SEC. When they play against one another, one of the teams has to lose. And so you're going to end up with a lot of teams that have 2 losses that you looked at the beginning of the season and said to yourself, I don't know how they could possibly finish with 2 losses going into the year. So like Oklahoma right now is ranked 15th. Have you guys looked at what Oklahoma's schedule is? Because I'm going to be surprised if they are ranked in the top 15 by the end of the year. They've still got Tennessee, Texas, Ole Miss, Missouri, Alabama, and LSU remaining on their schedule.
Woof.
And that did not include the fact that they play Tulane this weekend, who damn near beat Kansas State last week. That's 7 of the final 10 games of the regular season that are legitimately losable games for Oklahoma. It's tough, man. With the new way that scheduling is going to play out with the SEC and the Big Ten, it totally alters the way that we have to view these teams, especially as we get further into the regular season. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You give us a scenario, we'll tell you if we're betting it or forgetting it. Coming up next, you're on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK, and it is time to unlock your inner champion, and the place to do it is at Victory Men's Health. Check them out today. They've got 4 great locations across the St. Louis area, and you can find them online at victorymenshealth.com. When you go there, you go up to the upper right-hand corner. You'll see the tab that says Book Now. That's what I did. I gave them a call and said, I just need a little bit of help unlocking my inner champion, and I feel like I don't have the same energy that I once did. I'm not getting as much as I would like to out of my workouts. They were able to help me out. They checked me out with a micronutrient lab. They found out I'm a little low on some of my vitamins. I had a deficiency there, and they've been able to supplement that. And now I feel better day to day. I have more energy. I feel like I'm more alert at all times. That's the way they're unlocking my inner champion. For you, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's erectile dysfunction that you deal with, low testosterone, weight loss goals that you wanted to accomplish on your own but have been struggling to do so. They can potentially help you out at Victory Men's Health. So check them out today. They've got 4 great locations, and you can find them online at victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. You give us a scenario, we will tell you if we are betting it or forgetting it here on 101 ESPN. Alex, coming off of last night's loss, there's a lot of questions about the New York Jets and what they're going to be this season, if they have the same capability as people hoped coming into this season. Bet it or forget it, the New York Jets will miss the playoffs this year. I'm
going to say bet it. I still don't think they're a playoff team. I don't know who gets in that spot. I think right now it feels like it's going to be Dolphins or Jets as that other playoff team. But I was impressed by the Colts, even though they lost that game. I think they're going to fight at least for one of those playoff spots if they can get some more consistency with that offense. And I just look at the Bills and Dolphins as the superior teams in the AFC East. So I'm going to say bet it.
I'm going to forget this. I think they still make the playoffs. I think they're probably a 10, 11 win team. And if you win 10 games, you should be able to escape the AFC and make it. Now, that might mean they're the last wild card, but I think there were some things you can build upon. I thought Rodgers looked fairly good in his return off the Achilles injury, and I think their defense will play better. One, they're not going up against that buzzsaw that is the San Francisco 49ers, so I'll forget this.
I'm forgetting this as well. I think they're going to end up being a pretty good team, and they've got a schedule that will help them out here over the next few weeks. If they end up dropping one of these games against Tennessee, New England, Denver, or Minnesota, I might change my answer over the next couple of weeks. But right now, I think last night was more about the 49ers than it was about the Jets. I believe that the Jets will go 4-0 in their next 4 games, and we'll look back on this after the first month of the season and say, they're fine. They're going to be a really good team. So I'm forgetting this. I do think that the Jets will still make the postseason. Alex?
Guys, bet it or forget it. All 3 of J.C. Gorman and Donovan will be on the Cardinals next season.
J.C. Gorman and Donovan? I'm going to forget this. I think they'll trade at least one of them, and I think it's between J.C. and Gorman. I do not think Donovan's going anywhere.
Yeah, I'm going to forget this as well. I think they'll trade one of them. I'm with you, though, BK. It won't be Donovan. My gut kind of makes me wonder if it'll be Gorman. I think it just depends on how JC looks in the final, 18, 20 games they got left this season. But I'll forget this. I don't think all 3 will be with the Cardinals organization.
I'm forgetting it as well. I think if JC looks good in his roles, opportunities that he gets down the stretch, I wonder if Gorman becomes the poster boy for trade candidacy by the end of the season.
Guys, bet it or forget it. Both Missouri and the Illini will finish in the top 25 by the end of this season.
Man, I want to so badly bet this, but I just can't.
But they're going to lose to Central Michigan this weekend?
I don't think they will.
More likely Mizzou loses.
I don't believe that.
Probably to Vandy.
Nebraska being better than anticipated is something that could potentially hurt the Illini in this regard, because you've got to go to Nebraska. That's going to be a raucous environment on a Friday night there. Penn State's still going to be a tough one. Maybe they get Michigan.
Michigan to me is a terrible matchup for them because they'll just run down their throat.
I don't know, man. I don't trust Michigan this year. I think they could beat them, and it's at home. If that was on the road, maybe I'd feel a little differently about it. If the Oregon game was at home, maybe you've got a chance there as well, depending on if you have a couple of things that are weird in the game that go your way. I'm forgetting it because I don't think Illinois will finish in the top 25. They have to win at least one of those games that I just mentioned. Nebraska, Penn State, Michigan, or Oregon. They've got to win one of those 4 and take care of business against everybody else on the schedule to get into the top 25. Less than 9-3, I don't think gets them there.
Yeah, I think I'm going to forget this also. I think all 4 of those matchups, I know we talked yesterday, that Michigan one is an interesting one, so is Penn State, but I think being on the road makes things a little bit more difficult, so I'm going to forget it.
Yeah, I'm going to forget it as well. Don't get me wrong, as excited as I was for that win over Kansas, I don't think they beat any of those 4 teams that are ranked on their schedule, and I think they have the capability to slip up against somebody not named Central Michigan, because though they won that game against Kansas, and I picked them to win that game, and I said, hey, take them money line, take them on the spread. They didn't win that game at all, by the way, that I thought they were going to. And their D-line looks terrible. Their O-line couldn't protect the quarterback. They couldn't get the running game going either. None of the running backs were picking out holes very well. I can see where they end up being like 7-5, maybe even 6-6 still. So I'm going to say forget it.
All right, let's get to the text line. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for bet it or forget it. Alex, bet it or forget it from the 636. The Cardinals will eat roughly $12 million of Miles Michaelis' contract this offseason and trade him to get some of his money off of the books and open up that spot into the rotation.
I'm going to say forget it. I think the Cardinals are going to stick with this leadership thing, and I think they'll look at Miles Michaelis as a core piece to have in their pitching staff moving forward. I don't see him paying to get rid of him.
Oh, man. I'll bet it. We've seen them do these kind of moves before. Like they've somehow got out of the Mike Leake deal. This one's only 1 year. It's not $12 million. They can do that if they want to. I'll bet it. I think they'll do it, and they'll go with the youth movement and allow Graceffo or McGreevy to take his spot.
I'm forgetting it. If they make a move like this, I think it's with Steven Matz. I think that they will potentially decline the option on Lance Lynn. I think they bring Miles Michaelis back next year for the stability of what he brings into the rotation. For all of his flaws, and there are many, the quality of the innings that he pitched being chief among them, he does post. You can count on Miles Michaelis to go out there and start at least 25 games for you every single season that he's available. So that would be the reason why you don't trade him.
If they do that, and I would understand kind of the thought process there, they should still be crushed for it. And the reason why is you don't need two of those guys.
Well, Kyle Gibson's a better pitcher than him.
Kyle Gibson, you pick up Gibson's option, he takes that role. He posts, he's effective. He's going to be your quote-unquote innings eater. They can't even have Michaelis be an innings eater because he's so ineffective.
I do agree with that. You can't have two of those guys.
In this scenario, it would be Sonny. I think they might trade Fetty this offseason as well. That's the other thing that's influencing what I'm saying here, because it would be Sonny, Gibson, Palante, Michaelis, and then one young guy is what you enter the season with, and then the rest becomes depth, and whenever you have injuries or whatever spot starts, they become the guys that can come up at that point in time.
Yeah, I'd rather, if they're going to trade any one of their starters, and like the Fetty one makes sense, I get it. If they're looking to move another one, to me, I would even just still hang on to Matz. I wouldn't move Michaelis. I'd run it back with Matz again.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Better to Forget It. Guys, from the 618, Better to Forget It, Dvorsky will make the team out of training camp this year.
I'm going to say forget it because I think they're going to slow play this one. Curbs mentioned this yesterday with us. I didn't get to listen to the interview that Doug Armstrong did with Cam Jansen and Andy Strickland, but he did mention how, he does regret, Doug, they may have rushed Jake Neighbors to the NHL. I think they're going to do everything they can to keep Dvorsky in the AHL to start the season, so they slow play it. He's going to really have to outplay Braden Shen, Pavel Buchnevich, Radek Faksa, all of these guys as centermen in training camp. So I say he starts the season in the AHL.
Yeah, I'm going to forget this as well. I think he'll start in the AHL. I think it's just too big of a mountain to climb for him to get to this roster for opening night because of those two guys that you just mentioned.
They loaded up at center for a reason, and that's so they don't start him at the NHL.
Sweep it. We're all in agreement. I totally agree with you. I think that they will decide to let him marinate a little bit in the AHL, and then whenever he is truly ready and proves, based on his performance in the AHL, that he's ready, they'll go ahead and call him up, and then you insert him into the top six, and he becomes your number 2 center for hopefully the next decade.
First injury to one of your centermen, if that happens, which everybody has injuries, that's when Dvorsky gets the call up and a look.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, Alex has a tinfoil theory on the St. Louis Blues that we were just talking about, and there's one NHL analyst that seems way lower on this Blues retool than we all are locally. What is he seeing that we're missing? We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends over at Classic Air Care, taking care of you and your family and making people comfortable since 1926. Whether it's repairs or replacements for all of your HVAC needs, Classic Air Care is the place for you. And I speak so highly of them because I've been using them since 2016, but so many have seen and witnessed and used the great customer service, the knowledgeable technicians that come out and take care of all of your issues, like this comment and positive review on their Google reviews, a 4.8 rating from Michelle. Nick definitely was a miracle worker on a hot day, had the AC fixed in less than an hour, and was kind, polite, respectful, explained everything in a way that I could understand. So use Classic Air Care if you're having problems with your HVAC system, or maybe you're in the market to buy a new one. Get the company that's going to take care and put your best interests at their front of mind. Give them a call today, or you could schedule online. Classic Air Care. Tell them Alex Ferrario sent you. That's Classic Air Care and ClassicAirCare.com.
Terry Herman, Day Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Cardinals back in action tonight as they start a 3-game set with the Cincinnati Reds. 6:45 will be first pitch as Andre Palante will get the start for St. Louis. And the Cardinals today will be selecting the contract of one of their prospects, Thomas Sajasi, as he will join the big league club today, according to our Cardinals insider, Katie Wu. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alex, as I was starting to do my reading this morning on stuff that we would potentially use for the show, I came across a column by Corey Pronman over on The Athletic, and the title of this was Ranking the NHL Rebuilds. And I was like, all right, maybe Blues are involved in this. I bet you they rank pretty highly. Which teams are most likely to be contenders among the teams that are currently rebuilding? So I open it up, and I'm like, all right, I wonder where the Blues are listed. At number 1 on this list, they have the Chicago Blackhawks, and I immediately know I'm going to be mad about this list. I'm not going to like where the Blues are listed. So he continues from there. Number 2 was Ottawa. Number 3, Anaheim. Number 4, San Jose. Number 5, New Jersey. Number 6, Utah. Number 7, Buffalo. Number 8, Seattle. Number 9, Montreal. Number 10, Minnesota. Number 11, Columbus. Number 12, Detroit. Number 13, Philadelphia. Number 14, the St. Louis Blues. Now, according to Corey Pronman, there are 16 teams currently in rebuild mode. The worst teams, the least prepared teams to get back to contention, according to him, are Calgary and Pittsburgh. That, to me, makes sense. I can live with that. Alex, he had the Blues at 14th on this list, which means third least likely to be back into contention. This is a theme with Corey Pronman and some of his prospect evals for the St. Louis Blues. When I saw this, I was quite surprised. I do not view them as being this low. I think we're all much higher on their retool, clearly, than what Corey Pronman is. But sometimes we miss stuff when we are looking through this as a lens of being local. What is he seeing, in your opinion, that we are not seeing locally? What are we missing here?
At least for me, it feels like Corey Pronman is seeing an average prospect pool for the Blues. And because of that, they don't have that big prospect in their system. He doesn't see them as a team that's exiting out of it. And in his little blurb that he wrote about the Blues, it was basically saying, like, look, this team's stuck in the middle right now. They don't have anybody that's really going to come up and take them away. They always seem to resort back to the bad contracts by the Blues, which they're starting to get on the tail end of that. But to me, it always goes back with Pronman to Dalibor Dvorsky. And this goes back to 2023 when the Blues drafted him. It never felt like Pronman was high on Dalibor Dvorsky. He always felt like he was a middle six forward, and that was probably his ceiling. His cohort, Scott Wheeler, was the one that was a little bit higher up on Dalibor Dvorsky. And I feel like Pronman always goes to this is because Dvorsky didn't have any success in Sweden. He played in the Swedish Hockey League last season. He was not good. They took him away from it. They put him in the OHL, and he dominated. And it always goes back to, well, he couldn't play against men in Sweden, and he did good in the OHL. What's that next step look like? I think it all resorts around Dalibor Dvorsky for Corey Pronman and some people, because I view St. Louis in the exact same spot as the Minnesota Wild. The only difference, at least in their eyes, is one, they have a superstar in Kirill Kaprizov. I can't deny that, but it sure seems like a lot of people in the NHL view Robert Thomas kind of getting to that 100-point level like Kaprizov is already viewed. And two, it's their prospect pool. And Minnesota's prospect pool is highlighted by a kid that they just drafted 12th overall that is probably 2-3 years away from being in the NHL. If Corey Pronman viewed Dalibor Dvorsky a little bit better as like a guy who could be a top-line centerman and at least at best a top-six winger or a forward, I think we'd be talking about them being in the upper half of what he's discussing.
So basically, we're just talking about, is Dvorsky going to be what the Blues project him to be?
Sure seems like it.
And that makes sense to me, because that if we internally are looking at this as Dvorsky's going to be that guy, he's going to be a top-six centerman, he's going to be a guy that you could build around, and then you look up the middle and you're like, okay, we've got Thomas, we've got Dvorsky, that's a good starting point from there. If he doesn't view it that way, if he says, I think Dvorsky long-term is going to be a third-line center that is just okay, like a 40-point producer who you look at and he can be in your lineup, but he's not going to be the reason that you're good, well, then the Blues have a massive donut hole in the middle of their lineup right now, and it's going to be hard for them to fill without going out to free agency and probably overspending on some kind of significant free agent to fill that hole for them. So I can get how he would view it as being he's more pessimistic than we are. But even then, I still think that this would be an incredibly low ranking, even if you're lower on Dvorsky, because of the number of prospects that they potentially have coming through their pipeline right now. I guess then it just goes back to the blue line conversation that we've been having, and maybe he's lower on Broberg as well. And so he thinks, okay, Broberg's going to be a third pair defenseman, and Dvorsky's going to be a third line centerman. Mm-hmm. Still, man, below some of these other, like below Columbus.
Yeah. I think a lot of these teams that were higher up on this is because they've just drafted top 3, top 5 in the NHL draft. And, well, they've got all of these top-level prospects. But the thing about that is sometimes those guys drop further down the drafting charts, because for Pronman, the year that Dvorsky was drafted, he was considered like a top 25, top 35 prospect. But then in 1 year where it just didn't work in Sweden, which, by the way, that had nothing to do with Dvorsky, they were using him as like a 13th forward for a team. They played him 2 minutes a night. He goes to the juniors hockey and he tears it up. I always go back because if you read Scott Wheeler's article on The Athletic about Dvorsky when he was drafted, Wheeler talked with guys in the Swedish Hockey League that were like, oh, yeah, this dude's got like Nicholas Backstrom's trajectory. Everybody has their different opinion on certain players in the system. And when you go through that list of guys that were our teams that were above the Blues, look at it. You got Philadelphia that drafted Matvei Michkov. You've got Chicago that drafts Connor Bedard. Again, Minnesota, everybody seems to be excited about this 18-year-old defenseman they've just drafted. Columbus just drafted Adam Fantilli. If you're drafting in the top 5, a lot of these guys are going to be like, oh, well, this team's coming out of it faster.
All right, coming up in about 5 minutes or so, we're going to give you a chance to score a pair of tickets to Blues and Brews. That's coming up on Friday, September 20th at the Anheuser-Busch Brewery. Get fired up for the Blues season at this outdoor street party. Again, we'll give you tickets coming up here in about 5 minutes or so, or an opportunity to win those tickets in just a little bit. Alex, you have a tinfoil theory on the St. Louis Blues, and it's based upon a podcast that you were listening to the other day with one of the leading insiders in the NHL, and that's Elliot Friedman. Alex, Why do you think that the Blues still have another move in them?
So the quote by Elliot Friedman, he was talking about their offseason on the most recent episode of the 32 Thoughts podcast, and he discussed that the Blues were very aggressive in trying to get Martin H's, which us hockey guys called that. He also pointed out that the Blues were trying to get Cam Fowler from the Anaheim Ducks and said, like, they just couldn't get a deal done, and he said he doesn't know if that's dead or not because of the Broberg acquisition, but he said the Blues were being very aggressive this offseason, and then, of course, they get two guys off the offer sheet. I think Doug Armstrong still has another move up his sleeve before the start of next season. I don't know if that's at the trade deadline. I don't know if that's going to happen in the middle of the season, but it sure feels like Doug Armstrong's trying to put this team in the place that when Steen takes over after next season, there's no fiddling knobs with it. It's just, hey, develop and bring in guys that you seem fit. My tinfoil with this, bold take, or whatever you want to view this as, by next offseason, the Blues are going to have one more big move to this NHL roster that puts them in a contention conversation at the start of next season.
I've already made a couple of those big moves. Appearances by Braden Shin, Jake Neighbors, Dylan Holloway, and Philip Broberg, the two players that the Blues were able to acquire via offer sheet from the Edmonton Oilers. Drew Bannister, Blues alumni. They will all be at this year's Blues and Brews. It's the second annual tradition that we have with the St. Louis Blues to get us all fired up for the season. And right now, if you were texter number 101 at 314-399-9646 with the correct answer to the following question, you will win a pair of tickets to Blues and Brews. Those tickets, by the way, available right now. The question today. Earlier today, Alex was talking about the song that gets him to the dance floor immediately. What was the song that gets Alex Ferrario to the dance floor immediately when he's going to a wedding? If you're texter number 101 with the correct answer to that question, you are getting today's pair of tickets to Blues and Brews. That's coming up on Friday, September 20th. Coming up next, we're going to hit the BK and Ferrario Rewind here on 101 ESPN. Hey, 101 ESPN salutes our nation's military, and for service members, their families, and anyone else currently on base at Scott Air Force Base, you can join the Fast Lane for their annual Military Appreciation live broadcast. That'll be next Wednesday, September the 18th from 2 to 6 o'clock. If you're on base, we hope they'll stop by to hang out with the Fast Lane. Their live broadcast is next Wednesday, 2 to 6 o'clock live from the Scott Air Force Base. It's all brought to you by Air Comfort Service Heating and Cooling and Insulation, CarStar, and by Budweiser. If you guys missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Had a great conversation with college football insider and analyst for ESPN, Marty Smith, earlier today. He gave us his thoughts on Mizzou versus Boston College and why he did not think that Eli Drinkwitz is capable of building this kind of a program at Mizzou, but why he believes in them this season. So you can check that conversation out over at the podcast page. We also talked to Katie Wu, our Cardinals insider, about the decisions that are in front of the Cardinals. Alex, tonight the Cardinals do have a game. Once again, they're back in action with Andre Palante on the mound against the Cincinnati Reds. Alex, I'm going to ask you the question that is going to be, I would imagine, the focus of tonight's game. Is this the final opportunity that Andre Palante has in the rotation for the Cardinals in 2024?
It better not be. If you're asking me what the Cardinals are going to do, my guess is yes. It's probably going to be the last one for a little bit. I think they're going to want to see what Lance Lynn and Steven Matz has to offer. For some odd reason, 6.5 games out, they still believe they're in a chance for a playoff spot. I think they'll consider a 6-man rotation, but man, I'm very concerned that Andre Palante gets put into the bullpen or sent back down for Lance Lynn and Steven Matz.
Yeah, I think he's going to stay in the rotation. I think that they'll probably go to a 6-man and they'll just bump Michaelis to the pen, or a 5-man and they'll bump Michaelis to the pen.
You think they're done with Michaelis?
I don't know how you start him down the stretch, and there's no need to start him down the stretch.
Just not changing.
Well,
anything.
And he's here next
I
to
think
you.
they'll put him. I think they're going to keep Palante in the rotation. I mean, it's not even like they have to worry about innings on him. He's not even at a career high.
You think
innings.
Steven Matz, Lance Lynn, and Palante are in the rotation, and Michaelis is out?
Yeah, or if they keep Michaelis in the rotation, they'll just keep Matz in the pen. I don't think they're going to. I think Palante stays in this rotation. I think he will continue to start down the stretch because there is no worry of innings on him, and he is still a young guy.
There's no argument to pull him from your rotation.
And I don't think that they're trying for the playoffs. If they were, you wouldn't see Sajaci, you wouldn't see Jordan Walker, you wouldn't have seen them move on from Armstrong, you wouldn't have seen them DFA Pham. Their actions tell you they know they're out of it. So if that's the case, I think they will continue to start Andre Palante.
I mean, the actions in the pitching staff, though, haven't really been that way. The actions in the pitching staff have been the one place where it is still veterans.
I think they finally believe these young players actually give them a better shot at getting to the playoffs than the veterans that they had.
I think that he will continue to be a part of the rotation. I desperately hope that he will continue to be a part of the rotation. But I don't know, man. I don't know. It's the words versus the actions, and the actions are what's important. But all of their words are like, well, Lance Lynn, he's got to be a part of the rotation. He was brought here to do a job, and that job is to start for us, and so he's going to start. And, Miles Michaelis, he's got another year. He's got another year under contract, so how could we pull him from the rotation? And I think that means that it comes down to Palante versus Michaelis. And I don't know if this team's going to go to Miles Michaelis, who has a $17 million contractual obligation next season still in place, and say to him, yeah, you're going to be bumped to the bullpen for the rest of the season. Like, are they really going to do that?
Unless they get a rogue injury to him.
That's the other thing that could potentially help them here.
That's the one that I wonder about, that if somebody on the pitching staff comes down with he's got a back problem or lower back problem that we need to work.
Miles Michaelis has, in every season that he has started for the Cardinals, and it's been a full 162 game season, where he's been available and healthy. He has started at least 30 games for them every single time. He has 29 starts for them so far this season. Those round numbers sometimes matter to players. Like last year, it mattered to Miles Michaelis that he was able to get them to 200 innings. That was something that was meaningful for him. This year, he's not going to be anywhere close to that in terms of the innings threshold, but getting to 30 starts might be something that matters to him. Is this team just going to go up to him and be like, hey, no, you're not going to do that, though. We are going to willingly tell you no.
And then when he's back next year, be like, oh, yeah, we put you in the bullpen this year, but next year you'll be back in the rotation.
And we'll see. I think the toughest thing that Oli Marmol's had to do this season was managing the veterans, and we'll see if he has the guts to do it again with a Miles Michaelis, because he should be in the bullpen.
I'd argue Lance Lynn should be in the bullpen, too.
I think that's the one that,
I don't need to see what Lance Lynn has to offer for the final 3 starts of the season.
I really don't get that one. That one doesn't make sense to me.
Unless you're bringing him back again. Which wouldn't put it past this Cardinals team. More leadership.
Yeah. All right, we got the fast lane warmed up. He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Looking forward to hearing the guys from 2 to 6 today. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. We'll certainly break this one down, see what Andre Palante has to offer for the Cardinals as they finish out the last few weeks of this regular season. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. Fast lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.